Hi, thank you for listening to my podcast. If you're interested in creating your own podcast, it's easier than ever. You don't need any special equipment or spend hundreds of dollars on microphones and such. All you need is your smartphone and the Anchor app. Anchor is an app for you to create your own lovely podcast just like I did. It's absolutely free. All you need is the Anchor app, your smartphone, and some headphones to get started. You can download the Anchor app from either your Apple or Android marketplace or from anchor.fm. It's easy and free to get started. What if you already have your own podcast? Well, guess what? You can also use the Anchor app as well. You can actually upload all of your previous episodes and get started from there. And you can even monetize your shows as well if you choose to. Again, that's anchor.fm to get started. And again, it is absolutely free. Hello, and welcome to Millennial's Guide to Fascinating Womanhood with Jaleesa. This is Jaleesa. I want to thank you all so much for joining us in the show today. I wanted to spend this episode and give this episode of time to really talk about what are some of the myths people associate with fascinating womanhood. You might either be one of two different listeners. You might be either A, someone who is familiar with the teachings of fascinating womanhood, or B, you're someone who is probably not familiar with it. You've been hearing about it on the news, or you've been looking it up online, and you're getting a lot of negative connotations or rumors about what fascinating womanhood is. So that's why I would like to spend this episode talking about some of the myths and debunking them. So when it comes to the most obvious first myth when it comes to fascinating womanhood, it is the fact that some people associate fascinating womanhood with Stepford wives, and they feel that the book Fascinating Womanhood is turning women into Stepford wives. That is the biggest myth in the universe. And I am here to tell you that is not true. Now, if you are someone who is not familiar with the Stepford wives, let me break that down. It's actually a book, and it's been made into a couple of movies. One of them is made in the 70s, and of course, a lot of people do know about the one that was made in the 2004. It's more of a comedy, but the original one was a thriller. It stars this woman named Joanna, and she is, in the original, she is a photographer. The main one, the newest one, she is a television producer. And they moved to Stepford, Connecticut, where there's all these perfect and pristine housewives, and all they do is cater to their husbands and love them unconditionally, and pretty much just all they do is cook and clean and love their husbands. And to her, it's a little bit unusual. And her husband joins this men's club, which she really does not like the fact that he's part of this men's club. And she starts noticing that the women who started moving in around the same time as her, who were all these, feminist kind of women who weren't really into cooking and cleaning, they get indoctrinated into the Stepford wife mentality. And then she realizes that the men are responsible for turning these women into these kind of robot forms, that all they do is cook and clean. And in the original, she is turned into a robot, sort of. And in the remake, she pretends to be one to kind of do some undercover research on it alongside her husband. But what I'm trying to say is, a lot of people think that Stepford wives, and fascinating women kind of go together, because they think all that fascinating woman is telling them to do is cook and clean and go about barefoot and have babies. And that is not what we're talking about. We want women to reclaim and to be into their femininity, because it is so beautiful. And sadly, a lot of women in this day and age are trying to tap into masculinity, which does not work for them, because first of all, you were not born a man, you were born a woman. And it's so much easier to tap into what you are able to adapt to than to tap into something that you're not able to. And on top of that, men are not most men are not attracted to masculine women. They are attracted to feminine women. And it makes so much because of the fact that they're masculine and we are feminine and we complement each other. If we're trying to be the same as men, it just doesn't work. So again, it's a little bit more in depth once you get into the book and you learn about how we are to understand how men are and how you're able to get in touch with your femininity and reclaiming your inner happiness. Domestic Goddess, honestly, which does have to do with cooking and cleaning and motherhood, is a very small segment. It can get a little bit more in depth, but if that's the only thing you take from Fascinating Womanhood, you really haven't learned the timeless principles of Fascinating Womanhood. You've only learned one element, and then again, it's a very small element because a good majority of women can cook and clean and be mothers, but it is to reclaim your femininity and to learn to inspire your husband's masculinity so that you can create a love affair in your marriage. So that is the basis. And I will tell you something. A lot of people don't realize this with the Stepford Wives, because again, I'm not even gonna lie, a lot of us women in Fascinating Womanhood, we like to really draw ourselves to the Stepford Wives, except obviously we don't want to be robots. But here's something you have to realize. One, we are not perfect. We can't be robots because robots usually don't make mistakes. Humans do. And we should be fine with that. Two, there were actually sequels to Stepford Wives. One of the earliest sequels was called Return to Stepford. And it was made in the maybe late 70s, early 80s. And what happened was, this reporter, she's going into Stepford and she's trying to figure out why this city has lowest poverty rate and why so many women don't get divorced from their husbands. What is their secret? And obviously they don't want her to find out what the secret is. So they're really trying to get her out the way. And she stayed at a hotel, and the man who owns this hotel is so depressed and he's so lonely and upset. He's been drinking himself really into a stumper. And the reason is because he gave his wife, almost all the women again in this town have been indoctrinated into the Stepford wife mentality, including his wife. And all she does is want to cook and clean. And he's really upset about it because he has no one to talk to. All she wants to do is cook, clean, and he really cannot adapt to her. So you see, it's not just about all of that. Men want someone to talk to. They want somebody that they can conversate with and bounce off their ideas and such. And again, if you just take cooking and cleaning from it, it's not going to work very well. So that's one myth debunked. We're not trying to turn women into Stepford Wives. We're not going to be perfect. Accept your imperfections. Just get up the next day and work on it again. That is the best way you can do Fascinating Womanhood. The second myth that comes to play, it mostly has to do with a book. Now, I do always recommend our ladies, I know right now at the time of this broadcast, if you go to fascinatingwomanhood.com and you go to our shop, Fascinating Womanhood, the vintage edition, the original book that Helen B. Angelin wrote, and has been updated in 2017 to more modern times. That one I think is sold out right now. You can buy the book on Amazon if you're a US, UK citizen or such. That one, I think there's very limited quality. I'm going to really talk to Miss Dixie about that shortly, about that book, but that is the most recent one, and that is the one I have. As a teacher, I have to teach you from that one. If you go online, you are going to find the original Fascinating Womanhood that was updated last time in the 90s. I'm going to talk about that in a second because I really want to break that down because some people have some stuff confused about it. But anyway, that book, as of now, is out of print. The updated edition is either going to be a green and white, or a purple book and tiny. Those two are outdated, and again, I will talk about that in a second. But if you were to ever read that, there are a lot of success stories in it. There also, I think those success stories are all, they are in the updated vintage edition. Some of them talk about women who were in physically or mentally or emotionally abusive relationships with their husbands, and then after they used Fascinating Womanhood, their husbands turned and had a big 180, and they became these completely different men, and they're all lovey-dovey. So a lot of women have actually taken that and said that Fascinating Womanhood encourages women to not leave their husbands or to accept the fact that their husbands are abusive men and to stay with them. And think again, you have to look at the person's individual story. Again, these women, they wrote a letter to Miss Helen at the time who was alive when the book was updated in the 90s, and they said this is their story. We only look at a microsecond of their story. And they're saying, this is what my husband did. Whether he hit her 1 time or 10 times, we don't know. Whether he was mean to her 1 time or 10 times, again, we don't know. It was her choice to do what she did. One of the things we do with Fascinating Womanhood is you have to accept your man at face value. She accepted him at face value, that he can be this way. Am I saying to stay in an abusive relationship? Absolutely not. I wish that if you have a man, I don't even want to call him a gentleman, because a gentleman will never hit a woman or disrespect her. If you have a gentleman who is verbally or physically abusive to you, go seek professional help. Fascinating Womanhood teachers, the book Fascinating Womanhood is not a substitute for professional attention. Okay? Accept that he is this way and go find someone to talk to so you can follow the next steps in your life of what you want to do. These ladies, I think some of them had said they went to psychologists, they went to priests after this happened, and then they decided, their path, and then they read this book, and this is what happened. You as a person, if this is happening to you, please get the professional help in this category that can help you. Call the domestic violence hotline. Do what you have to do for you, and if you have children, especially for your children as well. But we are not encouraging any woman to stay in a physically violent relationship. That has never been the case. You have to understand that this book was written at a certain time, and there were certain patterns that was going on at that time. I really don't want to dig into that. But don't take that and say, oh, Fascinating Womanhood encourages violence, and they encourage people being abusive to their wives. No. Never. So that's one myth out the way. We don't encourage domestic violence. We don't encourage emotional or abusive violence. Please go get professional help with this situation. We are not the ones to help you with that, with just a book. Okay? There have been many relationship books, and we don't know if somebody who again was in that particular relationship read that book and got success from it, because those people probably didn't print the success stories that they received. But again, all stories are different. So I don't want anyone looking into diving into that. Okay, so that's one other myth down. Another one, I said I was going to dig into this because I actually literally talked to somebody who was talking about this the other day. And I've noticed this in the last couple of years since the vintage edition was put out, and I have not liked what some people have said. So I'm going to pretty much break down what the vintage edition is and why the other book you'll find on Amazon is out of print. So the original book, if you do not know, was written came out in 1965 by Miss Helen B. Andelin. It was this big hardcover book with a woman's drawing on it, and it's in white. So if you actually do find a copy that is white with the words Fascinating Womanhood, and there's like a little drawing of the ideal woman. If you look inside the book, it's the ideal woman. If you find that copy, that's worth probably a lot of money. So if you find it cheap, hold on to that. That's going to be worth some money, either now or down the line. That is the original copy, original book. Now, of course, over the years, books are, printed. They have new covers. And in the 90s, the book was actually updated. I think she talked and added some chapters in there about the working woman. I think they added a chapter in there about intimacy and in the bedroom. And it was more updated for the 90s, but nothing I think wasn't really taken out per se. And that was, I think, the last big updating. I think also was put out in 2007, but I don't think there was much updating. Of course, they added success stories, as I just said before. So prior to Miss Helen's death, she passed away in 2009. Miss Helen Andelin wanted to update the book. That's what she told Dixie, her daughter. She wanted to update the book. There were certain things that she wanted done. And the reason it did not happen in her lifetime, she got very, very sick and ill and passed on. So down the road, Dixie realizes, Dixie decides to, in 2015, 2016, she's writing her book. She's also, after she's written her book, she decides she's going to also, this is the perfect time to update her mom's book. Her mother is the one. This was her mother's final wish. We're going to update the book. This is how we're going to do it. And if you are not familiar with what they've done with the newest edition, they have done a couple things. And it's not even major stuff. It's actually very minor if you really look into it. A lot of the stuff is in there, but I will tell you off the bat what was taken out. I don't notice the intimacy part that I noticed in my purple book, so that part was taken out. That actually wasn't even, again, as I said, it wasn't even in the 1965 edition. Some things have editor's notes in it because it needs to be broken down a little bit more. I know a couple of chapters were broken down. The chapter about finance was taken out because that was actually added in by Miss Helen Endlin. She did not like to do finances, and I think that was a great chapter to take out because at the time when I was reading it, that was the chapter I was the most uncomfortable with. And I feel that as a woman, you need to know what's going on in your finances. I even have a little chart that I found from the, 60s and 70s about how women need to know what's in their husband's will, what's their life insurance policy, if they have any stocks and bonds, what are they? Women need to be literate about that. Don't be in the dark because you don't want it to be. And I'm dedicating this to the women who have a problem with Miss Dixie Endlin Forsythe editing the book. You don't want to be in the dark about what's going on in your finances. Please be literate, because if your husband dies, that's not the time you want to find out that your husband put you in $150,000 in debt and all the money from the life insurance policy has to go to that debt. Or he left the life insurance policy to somebody else in the family and never transferred it to you when you all got married. That's not the time you want to find out. That too, and a lot of people, they follow the Dave Ramsey program. If you're not familiar with him, he is a financial advisor in the U.S. He's really big in the Christian base. And he tells women and men, if you are married, don't do this program by yourself. Please do it with your husband or your wife. Please do it as a couple. He does not recommend going to the classes by yourself. If you go as a wife, your husband should be right next to you going as well. So I think, again, that's not a timeless principle to be illiterate about your finances. That is one big chapter that was taken out. Also, she takes out, and I think the one thing that a lot of people had a offensive thing about was the fact she took the Bible verses out, and she's had to repeat herself over and over and over again. And I really get upset that women don't accept this. She took the Bible verses out not because they're not Christian. She is a very devout woman. The reason they took the Bible verses out is because this is a book that is going to be going all over the world. In order for me to translate in certain countries, not everybody is a Christian. Not everybody reads the Bible. Sadly, in a lot of countries, a lot of people even know what the Bible is. And yeah, that could be a great tool for ministry, but that's not what this book is about. It is helping to help women reclaim their femininity, inspire masculinity in their men, and to create lasting love affairs. And in order to adapt to maybe to Russia or I know she had to take out the Bible verses first years and years ago when Miss Helen was alive to get the book in Japan because people weren't going to pay attention. So this book is for everybody. It is for Christians. It is for Muslims. It is for pagans. It is for Wiccans. It is for people who are atheists, who are agnostic. There's so many people who follow this book that are of different faiths. And again, if you do enjoy the Bible verses, that's great, but they were taken out in the updated version. Please don't be offended by it. I mean, yes, those are timeless principles that do go back to the biblical times, but at the same time, we want to make sure that this teaching reaches all over the world, not just to Christian-based Americans. This is an international, you have to understand, feminism is an international problem. Divorce is an international problem. It is not just a U.S. problem or a UK problem. It is international, all over the world. It's a Muslim problem. It is a atheist problem. It's probably even a Buddhist problem. It is a international problem. And if we can use this book to touch people all over the world, do you understand how amazing that would be? So that was one of the big things I heard people, they were really upset that she took out the Bible verses. And I think she also, and I mean, the most minor one was the fact that they updated it and said that women can wear pants as long as they're in a feminine manner. That's one of the tips she did give out, because in the original book it was to wear skirts. And I can clarify from family members who lived in that time period where they had to go to school, and as females they were required to wear dresses, not uniforms, just skirts and/or dresses to school. And that was the mid 60s. Could you imagine having to be required to wear dresses or skirts every single day? I might be in heaven, but not a lot of people would. So for women that mostly are more attracted to pants, and there is, she does tell you, use certain fabrics and use certain cuts that are feminine. But I know a lot of us still want to convey to dresses and skirts like moi. But again, from time to time, right now, sadly, majority of the time, I do wear pants. So that was the biggest one. So it was updated because Miss Helen Endlin wanted it updated. And I know some people were like, well, this happened after she died years and years later, and I don't believe it. But if your mother or your father actually do something and it's your final wish, it might not happen right after they die. But at the same time, you want to respect their wishes, don't you? So I think the best thing we could do, yeah, we might not have been there. We don't know if this is true or not. I believe it because, again, why not? I do believe Miss Helen Andlin asked this. And I'm going to do the best of being respectful and accept that this is what she wants. And I feel if you are a follower of Fascinating Womanhood, as you say you are, you would accept this too. You might feel that all of these teachings that she took out are timeless. That's your choice. And you can follow that. That's fine. But please be respectful to her family and not degrade them and be rude and disrespectful of something the most minor in the world over a book being edited. Did you not realize the book was edited in the 90s and stuff was added? Please be respectful. That's the most feminine thing you can do, is just be respectful. Okay, so that's again one big myth, which is the editing of the book. And again, I will look more into that, and if I do find out some news about the vintage addiction, and if it's going to be coming out again, I will give you that notice. I don't think they're going to be taking it off the market. I know they took the classic edition off. That was through another publisher, and again, it was not the updated version that they want. But I know definitely the Fascinating Womanhood Vintage Edition, they put so much thought into that. And I have my copy, and I actually need to get another one because literally the day it came in, my son got to the cover and it got all wet. And it was a pretty cover too. If you've seen the Fascinating Womanhood one, I now have just the cover that is burgundy. So those are, again, some of the myths that people associate with Fascinating Womanhood. I'm trying to think, is there any more that I want to? If I do, I will talk about it. But I really just wanted to use this time because, again, a lot of people are coming in and they have been hearing these wild stories about what Fascinating Womanhood is and what it isn't. And I do have one more that I know, and this is a big myth, and I'm just going to break it down as a woman who is trying to transition from this. Fascinating Womanhood is not telling women that they cannot work outside the house. Now, I will break this down because it is recommended, but it is not saying don't do this. Now, if you look in the original edition, and it is talked about in the new edition, but Miss Helen Andlin, Miss Dixie broke it down a little bit more. It was recommended for women not to work outside the house unless Your husband is ill and he cannot work anymore. Well, there's been a temporary financial obligation that requires you to work outside the house. And once that obligation has been met, quit and go back in the house. Again, that was written in 1965. There was a lot of things going on that were different in 1965 that is different now in 2020. More than half women at that time were in the house. Very little women worked outside the house. And again, they probably worked because they were single. They probably worked because their husband could not be the only one who could be the main provider, and so they had to go out and work as well. Or again, it was just their choice. Now, Fascinating Womanhood is not telling women, hey, if you want to be a fascinating woman, please don't work out the house. And I remember a couple years ago, there were women who said, hey, I do this, I work at such and such place. And I actually would hear women who were fascinating women, who followed Fascinating Womanhood, and they would tell these ladies, you're not supposed to work if you're a fascinating woman. Your husband, you should not you should not work. Your husband should not allow you to work. Well, if you live in certain parts of the country like I do, first of all, I'm single, so I have to work. 2, you might live in a very high income area. Your husband might not be able to make that. I live in Maryland. They said in order for me to live comfortably in Maryland with a nice house, picket fence, yard, $92,000 a year. Not everybody making $92,000 a year. Good start, but wow, $92,000 a year in Maryland. And it's probably a little bit more where I live because I'm closer to the Beltway, which is closer to DC, which is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you're not getting no picket fence. You'd be lucky to get a condo in DC for that much per year. So some of us do have to work. Now, the new updated vintage edition, it says, hey, if you need to work, but probably wait till the kids get a little bit older, maybe kindergarten, school age, once they're able to go to nursery. When they're tiny, wouldn't recommend it. But if you need to, we understand. But then again, to each its own. As I said, I have a little goober, but I'm a single woman, so I have to go outside the house to work. But right now, I'm trying to find ways to make money in the house. And that can be a little bit complicated, but I want to be able to be there for my son and work while he's either taking a nap or while he's asleep or while he's doing his independent play. But it's hard. But trust me, I know I'm going to be able to do it. I just don't want to be outside the house and leave him with goodness knows what. Thank God I have my mom to help me watch him, because I'd be really scared to leave him with somebody I don't really know. The news is just horrible with people when you leave your child, even in a professional daycare center. I remember his father said at the time when we were together, let's just find a daycare center with a camera. And honestly, daycare centers with cameras, the only thing is if something happens, you have proof. And trust me, I've heard of people who were working and had their children in daycare centers with cameras. And I remember one woman, the child was 4 months old, and she literally has to see a videotape of a woman covering her child's mouth and suffocating her to death because the child wouldn't stop crying. That's one of the reasons why Miss Helen Inland said stay with your children at home. And that's one of the reasons we say, hey, when your children are small, try to stay at home. And again, it's not saying don't work in the house. I mean, there's so many things you can do. And now with the technology we have compared to 1965, think about so many other things we can do now. Back then you were able to make lunches for neighbors who wasn't able to, maybe a bachelor man, he's not the best cook. You can make food for them, or make food for your senior citizen neighbors who aren't able to get around the kitchen like they were able to. You can do music lessons, you can do sewing, you can do crafts, you can make soups, you can make cosmetics, you can sell cosmetics if you're into the direct selling MLM thing. Be cautious about that, because a lot of them are not good. You can now make your own blog. You can be a virtual assistant. Maybe if the kids are at school, you could do Ubers, or now they have services in certain areas where you can pick kids up and drop them off for an income while you're at different schools or centers or activities. You can do that while your kids are in school. You can do deliveries for groceries. You can do deliveries for lunch during lunch hour. There's so because again, and that might even help, because sometimes when you are working outside the home, a lot of people don't really add into play how much it costs to put children in daycare. And on top of that, maybe your kids are all sorts of activities. You got to put that into perspective as well. You have to think about the gas, getting to and from work. Not only that, to and from the daycare center. That's a big one you might have to add up, and you forget to add that one up. You have to think about eating lunch, and then if sometimes when you want, when you're so tired, you have to, of course, have dinner, and you don't want to cook dinner, so you take your kids out for dinner. I remember working in a daycare center and seeing parents who were so tired of not even making lunches, they would bring Chick-fil-A or McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's every single day. And those kids would be like, hey, after school, I'm going to go to Chick-fil-A. And I'm like, didn't you just have that today? And so we're thinking about what we're putting into our kids' bodies. I mean, yeah, that would actually probably take away, because you can be able to make food at home. Even if you get one of those little meal kits where everything is there, all you gotta do is maybe add butter or oil or salt and pepper. And that's usually stuff that's already in your pantry. And you can just cook the food in 30 minutes. You have dinner. So think about some of this stuff. I didn't even talk about uniforms for work, because you might, and of course, if you have to wear a suit, you might have to get them dry cleaned. That's a big addition as well. A lot of people don't realize, if you don't add that stuff up, what are you spending your money on? I remember someone had did a math breakdown for a woman. And actually, I will tell you what channel it's on. It's called Living on a Dime. It's a really good YouTube channel. If you're learning how to save money, go over to them. She has some wonderful books. But she has a series called Living on One Income. And one of the first videos in the series, she talks about how she took this woman's calculations of what she made per month and per hour, and she broke down how much she was spending in the different expenses. And after she broke down all the woman's expenses, this woman pretty much was only making 12 cents an hour. So pretty much, and after taxes and everything, and I don't even think she included insurance and 401ks and stuff, but pretty much this woman was just working to work. So I recommend, if you're someone who is working outside the house, look at your expenses, look for your expenses both in the house, and look at your expenses of what you are using your money to for work expenses per day, per week, per month, per year, and see how much you are really bringing in, and see if this is either something you can make at home, or is your income even needed. And you might want to sit down with your husband when you do that. That's just the tip. But again, we're not telling women not to work outside the house, because again, there are some wonderful women in all different occupations, and some of us are definitely needed in our occupations. Our feminine energy is needed, and if it's taken out the office, goodness knows what will happen. But then again, it's always recommended till your kids, wait till your kids get a little bit older and they can, go to different activities or after school care and such. So those are pretty much the myths of Fascinating Womanhood broken down. I hope, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can leave a voice message if you are listening in on Anchor. And I'll be back with another episode very soon. Again, thank you all so much for joining me. And I hope to hear you, to have you all listen to me soon. The next episode shall probably be about the ideal woman and what that looks like in a man's point of view. I was going to do feminism, but I just found out about the FM miniseries, Mrs. America, which is about the start of the Eagle Forum and the bill of the ERA trying to get through. And there's a wonderful all-star women cast that's going to be in that. So that's about Phyllis Schlafly. I hope I got her last name right, who started Eagle Forum. If you're not familiar with that, it's like a conservative, right-wing organization that is pro-family, pro-traditional values here in the U.S. I'm not a member of that organization. I have some things I'm not fond of with that organization, but that's my personal opinion. But I think that's a really good breakdown, because again, it's the 50th anniversary of when the ERA bill came to play. And actually this year, it was supposed to be that Virginia said, hey, we're going to be the 38th state, quote unquote, to ratify the ERA bill, Equal Rights Act. And I think I just said ERA as in bill. I think I just got that wrong. My history lesson just went out the window. But actually did not qualify because back in the 80s, 5 states actually withdrew in ratification of their act, and they took that to court in the 80s and said, hey, we can't, even if it gets to that, can't take it. So you can learn a bit more about that. And also want to do a lot more research on feminism, so I can give you a really good lesson on that, and you can make your own choice. But that's going to come out in April, and I feel like that's the perfect time to talk about it. It gives me time to do a little bit more research. But again, thank you all so much for joining me here today. I hope to hear from you soon. So until next time, thank you, and have a lovely, wonderful, fascinatingly blessed day. Bye-bye.